Let's move forward now to speak about ABBYY FlexiCapture verification, specifically about task management. So we'll talk about tasks in general and data verification operator activities as opposed to verification operator activities, and then we'll really focus on what a senior verification operator can achieve. So here are some icons that we see in the verification station. Notice that we're not saying get batch, but we're saying get task, close task. So when we get a task, it's first in, first out. A verification operator clicks the get task, and that's the order in which tasks are received, unless there are tasks of higher priority. When a task is closed, then it goes on to the very next stage. It doesn't necessarily mean go to export. I was at a client site and I was watching someone do some verification, and guy opened up a batch and corrected everything and closed, rather a task, opened a task and closed it. And then he opened up another task and he said, oops, and he closed the verification station. And I asked, why'd you do that? And he said, well, I didn't want to work on that task, and if I closed the task, it was going to go forward as if it had been processed. And I said, why didn't you use the reject task? And he said, well, I hovered over that and learned what it was, but I didn't understand what that meant. So when you reject a task, you're going to keep it in place. So you've got an option, if you'd done some verification, whether or not to save what you'd done so far, or if you wanted to delete any verification changes that you'd made. But essentially, rejecting a task keeps it in place in the original queue. You can postpone a task if you are hot and heavy in a given task and you need to go to lunch. You can postpone it and it will be waiting for you when you return. You can also mark a task to be sent to exception upon closing, right? So first you mark it for sending to exception, then when that task is closed, it will go there next. And similarly, you can send to rescan. Senior verification operators have some extra capability. If you're a regular verification operator, you really can't cherry pick. But a senior verification operator has more power, and they can switch between task and batch view, and that will allow them to see more in batches view, and then they can drill down and see more information in queues view. So they can also send batches, reroute them to other stages, and they can work with these important queues. Really, they're not going to be working on the rescan queue. That will be a scanner operator, but the export confirmation queue and the exception queue, and that's a real important queue. So a senior verification operator has more powers and capabilities. When you switch to batches view, you can see there's a lot of information available right off the bat. You can see things like creation time and what stage and confidence level. So a lot of information right here, and you can apply filters. We'll get to that in a second. You can also, as a senior verification operator, highlight a queue and say explore this queue. And then once again, you get a screen with more information. So that's very helpful. A little bit more on that. So you can, when you're in a queue correcting things, you can correct all the errors, or you can reroute to a different stage. But once again, queues exploring allows you to kind of explore what's in the system rather than sticking to a first in, first out modality. The exception queue is very important to monitor. Your power users should monitor it. So if any document is sent to export, but there's rule violations or other problems, instead it's going to be sent to the exception queue, or maybe there's some unknown documents. By default, it's going to go to the exception queue. So someone needs to be monitoring that exception queue to resolve those errors right on the spot, or to reroute them to other queues for, and you can send a text message along with that routing event so that people know why it got sent to a particular queue and how to resolve the problems. And batch filtering. So you may know that a batch persists for 14 days after it's been exported, but if you wanted to see that batch, or perhaps bring it back from the dead and see it and maybe reprocess it, you click on, as a senior verification operator, you click on a filter capability in batch view, and you can select batches on stages, and you select from a drop list of stages the stage processed, and that shows you all the batches that have been exported. So there's a lot of features beyond that. It's a great way to look around and see what's in your system. So you kind of had to derive from my explanation of senior verification operator what a verification operator can and can't do. So this is a more limited role. Senior verification operator can do a lot more cherry picking, browsing, and moving tasks and documents within a task to different queues and so forth. The data verification operator actually can do data verification in either the data verification module or the verification module, which is very powerful, but their role is limited. They can adjudicate characters and do format check resolution and resolve simple rule violations, but it's a much more limited role, and it's kind of a brilliant design, I think, for people who are fast at data entry to knock those kind of problems out and let power users resolve the rules.